Why can't you move on from the narcissist? Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Millions of people have accessed my work through reading blog articles and watching the videos. Thousands have spoken to me. Many people, by implementing whatever I advise them to do, because I understand my kind and your kind so well, have achieved that freedom. Many people come to me struggling to move on from the narcissist. Sometimes this is because the narcissist is continuing to hoover that victim. They find themselves on the receiving end of the narcissist trying to draw them back in. Sometimes done benignly. I want you back. I miss you. I'll change. I've worked on myself. I've improved. I'm a better human being. In other instances, it's malign. You better come back to me, or else. You should come back to me, because I need you, and you've hurt me. If you don't come back to me, this will happen. Thus, the narcissist is hoovering, perhaps in person, perhaps by telephone, text message, social media message, and that is making it difficult for the victim to move on. But I'm not going to be dealing with those instances of where you're being hoovered by the narcissist. I cover what you can do in such circumstances in other videos and material that you can find in the Knowledge Vault, for instance, how to stop the hoovers. Thus, you are able to prevent the narcissist from having physical involvement with you or communicating with you through closing down arenas 1 and 2 of the arenas of interaction as per the additional material that I've provided. It's more usually the case that where an individual is unable to move on, it's not because of what the narcissist is doing. Indeed, the narcissist may not even be bothering with the victim. The narcissist usually has moved on to somebody else, which is causing considerable problems for the victim as they look on that relationship and wonder, why are they with this person? Or why did they reject me? Instead, the problem that the individual has is making sense of what has happened to them. The problem that they have is that they are struggling to move on because they find themselves continuing to think about the narcissist, what happened with the narcissist, the events of the relationship, the things that were said, the things that were done, trying to make sense of them. The individual finds themselves talking over and over again about the events with friends, with family, perhaps with a therapist. They find themselves doing clue hunting, doing investigative work to try and find out more about the narcissist, what they have done, what they're now currently doing. And they are hit by that sensation of, I just can't move on. I keep thinking about them. I keep worrying. I'm frightened. I'm anxious. I'm still angry. They are not able to make that move forward. Why? Well, on the basis that the narcissist is leaving the victim alone because their attention is elsewhere, this essentially all becomes self-inflicted. And the reason for it is that the victim has an addiction to the narcissist, and the victim sits at the heart, or rather the addiction sits at the heart of the victim, wanting to be fed. In order for this to happen, it needs to con the victim into taking steps to still have some form of interaction with the narcissist. So it needs to cause that victim to keep spying on the narcissist under the auspices of, if I know what the narcissist is doing, I'll feel safer. Or, I want to see that the new relationship has gone down the pan. That'll please me to see that there's trouble in paradise. Or I want to work out what it is about this new person as to why the narcissist chose them and not me. It causes them to speculate about what happened in the relationship so that they talk about it incessantly with no doubt some very bored family friends and maybe even a therapist, as I mentioned. And it causes those thoughts to go round and round and round. Was some of it real? Did they mean any of it? Why did they end it? He said that he loved me on Monday and then Tuesday ended the relationship. Why would somebody do such a thing? What did it mean when he said this? Did he really mean that he wanted me out of his life forever? But then he's kind of said we also still want to be friends. He said that it's ended, yet he has shown that he was interested in me still. I don't understand. Why did he choose him rather than me? Why has he gone off with her rather than stay with me? Why doesn't he bother with our children anymore? Where's the money that is owed to me? Thousands upon thousands of questions that are going around and around in your head. Commonly, many people think that the antidote to these issues is to gain understanding. And in part, that is correct. By understanding something, it enables you to form closure. Ah, now I get it, and move on. But that's the whole point. You need to be able to get it. My work is unrivaled in providing you with explanations in terms that are not esoteric, that you can understand, that aren't psychological or scientific in nature, so that you're not bogged down in such terminology. I explain the behaviours in relation to what you have experienced so that you can cut through it, so you can gain that understanding. But at the early juncture of the cessation of your relationship with a narcissist, whether you left them and escaped or whether they disengaged from you, you often struggle to understand. This isn't because you're stupid, it's because your emotional thinking won't let you understand. Emotional thinking is the enemy within. And basically, what happens is this. When you've been in the relationship with the narcissist, you have been in all 5 of the arenas of interaction, and thus your emotional thinking is extremely high. Emotional thinking causes you to use flawed logic, it corrupts your traits, and it charges up the battery of feeling, make you feeling in a particular way. And that tripartite approach means that you keep staying stuck. You are tempted to contact the narcissist. You allow the narcissist back in. You spy on the narcissist. You drive past the narcissist's house. You sit outside watching what's going on. You snoop on their social media. You keep talking and thinking about the narcissist. And thus, you're not moving forward. And you think that you're doing all of these things because you need to understand. But this is what happens. Because you're at a starting point of very high emotional thinking, your logic struggles to get a foothold. So you think to yourself, I need to understand what has happened to me in order to move forward. So I will think about what has happened to me, I'll talk about what has happened to me, I'll go and seek some clues as to what's going on. Thus, you stay in 3 arenas of interaction. This means you're keeping your emotional thinking high. It's barely going down. Accordingly, it won't let you understand. You then find, I still don't understand what this meant or why this happened. I know, I'll try and understand it some more. So you carry on with your clue hunting, and your talking, and your thinking, which you are inadvertently, yes, keeping your emotional thinking high. Thus, this prevents you from understanding. And thus you find yourself stuck on the narcissist's wheel of misery. Namely, your very attempt to understand is actually stopping you from understanding and keeping you locked in with the emotional thinking. What you must do in such circumstances is resist the urge to try and understand, and instead know this. I was involved with a narcissist, I must have nothing to do with them and impose a total no-contact regime. Now is not the time to understand, now is the time to stay away from the narcissist and out of those 5 arenas of interaction. Do that, stick to it, and your emotional thinking will then come down. You will then create room in your head for the logic, and all of a sudden you can revisit those questions and it'll start to make sense. You have not become any more intelligent, you've simply cleared some of the fog of your emotional thinking to make space for logic. And thus, those questions where you couldn't grasp the answers, all of a sudden it becomes clearer to you. A number of years ago, I had a client in Las Vegas. She lived with the narcissist, her husband. She was a very clever woman who ran a very successful business from home. He also ran his own business from home. They had quite a lot of money. She would speak to me every week, and she would ask me the same questions every week. And she knew that she was asking me the same questions every week, asking me to explain once again why he did what he did. What did it mean when he said this? Eventually I said to her, look, the reason you keep asking me the same questions and you know that you're doing so is because you're not doing anything to reduce your emotional thinking, so it's stopping you from understanding. You are in the house with him. You communicate with him. This man was bringing back other women and sleeping with them under the same roof as his wife, yet she did not leave. In some instances, he would invite her to participate in threesomes, and she did so. And yet she knew she was being abused, but she wasn't doing anything about it. Eventually, and I needn't go into the detail of how this was done, but I caused her to leave the house and go and stay with her sister. Just for a couple of days. And then thereafter, as planned, we spoke again, and she said she was going to stay for a further week. Already, she was starting to gain logic because she had removed herself from being with the narcissist, so her emotional thinking was coming down. Thereafter, we spoke again, and she asked me the questions, and this time it started to sink in. She started to become ready to understand. And it's the same for you. If you find that you're not able to move on from the narcissist, if you're perplexed as to why the narcissist seems to have some hold over you, even though they're not actually bothering with you, it is a consequence of your addiction and the presence of emotional thinking, and you absolutely must reduce that emotional thinking. Sometimes you can start to understand and it makes sense. Why? Because you've already created room in your head for that to happen. Good for you. Build on that understanding. But if you're asking the questions and the answers aren't making any sense for you, then what I would recommend that you would do is instead abide by this simple diktat, which is recognize you're dealing with a narcissist, stay away from them, implement the no-contact regime, speak to me to understand what that involves, and then you will, as night follows day, reduce your emotional thinking. And when that happens, you will create space in your mind and you will suddenly start to understand. The answers will flow. And then, emboldened by this and encouraged and maintaining your no-contact regime, you'll be able to understand more and more about what happened to you. And thus, you will eventually be able to move on from the narcissist. There's no substitute for my information, and there's no substitute for speaking with me if you want to get that bespoke analysis and intervention to help you. But I've explained there what is holding you back if you suddenly find, I just can't understand. Stop trying to understand. Just accept what you've been dealing with, implement your no-contact regime, and revisit understanding in a few weeks' time. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.